Hi, y'all. We're back at it again.
Hello, welcome back to the MacGuffin tapes. I'm here joined today. He returns back from the dead. Dario, how are you?
The surviving Michael B. Jordan triplet.
Indeed, indeed. It's good to be back, as Tony Stark says.
For those who don't know or who have been wondering how Dario looks like, well, he's basically a twin of Michael B. Jordan.
I'm
At
honored.
least that's what Michael is saying. I don't know.
I mean, when Ella first told me that story, I was like, actually, you got a little bit of a point. I can see it a bit, yeah.
Everybody has a doppelganger except for me.
Yes, my doppelganger apparently is Austin Butler.
That's also true, though.
We haven't found Alla's doppelganger yet.
Yeah.
Alla, how are you?
Me? I feel sad without a doppelganger. I wish I had one. But yeah, the reason why we're talking about Michael B. Jordan is not just because Darius here, but because today we're here to talk about a film that broke the internet recently. And
Did
it
it
is...
break the internet, though?
Yes, it definitely did.
Okay.
It definitely did. So it is Ryan Coogler's Sinners. And I'm with the internet. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed with this movie. And these two actually know it very well.
But what's this about that it broke the internet? Is there a new thing that came up now, or?
It's just very, very, very popular. Everybody's talking about it. And everybody's saying how it's the best movie of the year, of the decade, of the 2020s, of the century, all kinds of things. And I am inclined to agree. But yeah, so I had a great time watching this movie. Both times were great. But yeah, I am joined by two skeptics today, so that's going to be interesting to talk about it.
No, not skeptics. I would also agree that it's probably one of the greatest blockbusters so far this year. I mean, the thing is, we haven't had any great movies come out yet. That should change like in May. But so far, at least for me, there wasn't anything where I thought like, oh, wow, this is incredible.
To be fair, though, the fact that we get a second vampire movie this year after Nosferatu, well, okay, technically speaking, Nosferatu was 2024, I think, but we saw it this year, and it's actually kind of crazy, and especially considering it's already the second vampire film we're talking about on this podcast as well.
Yeah, but that's probably because you're such a vampire hyper and not because there are objectively always awesome movies coming out with vampires.
I would say that objectively speaking, both Nosferatu and Sinners are very good movies.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it a
lot.
Nosferatu.
I read up some things before the movie released and the marketing leading up to this. There was also some hype about it, you can say, because I think I read that Variety published like an article saying, oh, well, Sinners, this movie produced by Warner Bros. Is it? Is that correct? I think it's Warner. Yes. They were saying in this article how much money it had to make in order to break even. And then Variety got a lot of backlash for that. And everyone, or the industry sort of sided with Ryan Coogler and the movie. And I think that in the end, that generated a lot of positive publicity for this film. And they also released a lot of interviews on YouTube with Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan. One that made the rounds was where Ryan Coogler was explaining the different formats that you can see the movie in. So like in the IMAX format and different kind of millimeters and different sound systems. So we actually, I don't know the exact format we saw it in, but we didn't see it in IMAX.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't even have IMAX in the original language here.
No?
No, not at all. I mean, at least not in the German part of Switzerland. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't see it. But also, actually, what I wanted to say is what I heard is that It's the first. So this film's director of photography was the first female to make a film in IMAX.
Yep.
Kind of interesting.
And the question was, did they shoot it on film? I don't remember right now.
I mean, they shot it on an IMAX camera for IMAX specifically. I think.
Yeah, but I think you can still shoot digitally or in film.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know. I thought it was only digital.
Yeah.
I just want to say right off the bat, this podcast will most likely contain major spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, what are you even doing here? Go watch the movie. It's the best. And go watch it in the best possible quality you can. Definitely in the cinema, and if you can, in IMAX.
Unless you get headaches from IMAX. Huh?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like in my case. Let's just jump right in.
Let me recap the plot at least a little bit. We won't go into too much detail. So the film is set in 1932 in rural Mississippi. We follow twin brothers Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan. The twins have recently returned from Chicago, where they were gangsters, as far as we find out from the story, and they come back to their little hometown in Mississippi Delta, where they want to open a juke joint. And so they enlist the help of their local friends and family, most notably of their little cousin Sammy, who is a prodigy blues musician and who is then ultimately actually the protagonist of the story. Yeah, I think that's about as much as I want to say for the plot, because I think if you are listening to this, you probably saw the movie, or you should have. Michael, you want to start with the opening scene?
Yeah, I did want to start with the opening scene or the opening shot because I think it's quite beautiful. I think it's this old car coming in from the left side towards a church. And I don't know, I really enjoyed how the camera sort of moves along with the car, glides along with the car. And then I don't know if it doesn't even pan. So the camera follows the car along and then it just stops so that we can see the car and the church in frame. And that's where we get to meet this character, Sammy, which is, I mean, we don't know the actor, so that's why, okay, who is this guy? Huh? And yeah, so he's returning from a night.
From a party.
Yeah.
You can see it was some party there.
Yeah, what we can't see is that he is carrying parts of a guitar, and then when he enters in the church later, we can see that I think it's the left side of his face is sort of scarred, and then he approaches the preacher or the priester, which is his dad, as we get to find out later, and yeah, I think he asks him about. He asks him to let go, I think, right?
To let go of the guitar, yeah.
Yeah, let go of that guitar. And that's also, I think here is where we get some very quick, short frames foreshadowing what will happen during this night. I think we just see...
subtle foreshadowing. I love that. This is like seriously one of the best things of this movie for me. This would be something that I would come back to watch this film for, is this opening scene and the subtle foreshadowing snippets.
Yeah, I think it's 2-3 frames where the first one is we get to see the main antagonist, the vampire, and then we get to see the sort of this place in flames, and I don't know if there's a third one as well.
I think it's just Remick.
Just Remick, okay.
I think it's just the 2 shots of Remick, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that scene sort of concludes with Sammy sort of in almost in an ecstasy. I don't remember if the music sort of swells up with a choir. The tension builds up, and then we cut and we get to see I think the same church outside, but now with 2 of our other main characters.
So we go back 24 hours. So the most of the story is taking place within about 24 hours, and the structure of the story actually has been compared to the legend From Dusk Till Dawn. Mm-hmm. So the first part of the story, about half of the film, is just the world building, where we meet all the characters, and it's almost like a quest where the twins that we meet right after the scene in the church recruit help from their friends in the local community. And yeah, so after the church scene, we cut back 24 hours to the previous day.
Yeah. Oh, we forgot to mention something very important. I think between the opening shot and the first time we get to meet the twins, there is this title card, which I thought was really beautiful, which sort of tells us the story about the, I forget how they call them, these singers, these sort of shamans who can, through their music.
They mention different names, but basically, yeah, it's just, I think the voice of Annie, one of the characters, one of the supporting characters, telling the story of those special musicians, or yeah, so we get primed by the story about music, about musicians that hold special powers because they establish kind of the connection with the ancestors. But then the flip side of those powers is that they also attract evil spirits, and this is the premise of the story. This is something we're going to build the story on, I guess.
Yeah, what's also shown in that title card is sort of the cultural history about these shamans who started. I think they mentioned Africa and some other places, so they go through history a bit as well. And
I think she doesn't necessarily go through the history. She just says that every culture, every people, every community has those people. And it's not necessarily about specific time. It's just that once in a while there are people that can do that have this special power. And in this particular community, Sammy happens to be that person.
Yeah, that's right. That's well said. Anything else? Yeah, I wanted these drawings I thought were really interesting. I don't know what style it is, but it looks, at least at me, it reminded me some like picturesque drawings from, I don't know, Mayan or the Mayan times. I mean, these sort of picturesque drawings. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Mm. But I think this scene, this kind of almost like an animation scene, I guess, has an important role in the film because it is kind of creating a setting in which the story is going to take place. Because obviously, while it is about this community, this an African American community, but not only, because there are also some other characters that are Chinese and then Irish, of course. The main part of the story is about music and what power the music holds. And I think the whole story in general is very inspired by the Southern Gothic trope about Devil Went Down to Georgia. I think it's the song is also, there's a song like that. So it being the 1930s Mississippi, blues is the genre of choice here. And so blues was notably known as the devil's music. So at least in the religious community, and this is also what we get in the first scene of the film with Sammy's father, right? Yeah, well, it was kind of a party music, I guess, right? So it was known as the devil's music. And this is, of course, reminiscent of Robert Johnson, who, I don't know if you know about that story, but I feel like it's kind of injected into pop culture enough that people at least know of the concept. So he was an African-American musician who was so talented, he was rumored to have made a deal with the devil. You know that story, right?
No.
Yes. Have you seen, Michael, have you seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, but it's been a while.
Coen Brothers? Okay. Well, in any case, he is one of the first members of the 27 Club, which I'm sure also a lot of people and you have heard of. The 27 Club is kind of like a cultural phenomenon, I guess you could say, and it's a list of musicians who died at the age of 27. So statistically speaking, it seems to be the age when popular musicians seem to die a lot. And the list has legends like Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. And so Robert Johnson was one of the first people who were in this 27 Club. And there's a specific landmark that the legend is tied to. Daria, do you know what it is?
Well, yeah, it's this guitar or something, right, in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi State.
What do you mean the guitar? It's the crossroads.
Well, yeah, but there's a guitar there. Yeah, but yeah, the crossroads in some
but that's
some
the
random
crossroads
town in the US.
In Mississippi specifically. It may not even be a town. It's just like outside of a town or whatever. So the music is a very important part of the story, and this is why we start with it. And we start with the kind of the pastor talking to Sammy and saying he has to give it up.
Yeah, two thoughts. The first one is that it's interesting that you mentioned the Coen brothers, because I was listening to a podcast about the Coen brothers recently, and yeah, the Coen brothers are also known sort of to talk about the South, and the movie that you mentioned. Yeah, I think the music is also a big part of Brother, Where Art Thou? So yeah, it's interesting to see that this movie also talks about the South and the music from a different angle, maybe I would say, but yeah. And the second thing here is we mentioned blues, but I think the second type of music is gospel in the church, and which was also very prominent in like in Black communities, let's say.
Mm. This was actually one of the few films where I actually went and listened to the soundtrack again.
Yes.
I usually don't do that. Michael is usually the one to do this, I feel like. Mm-hmm. But it was really good. I added some things to my playlist. A lot of it was really good. I mean, it was all very good, but a lot of it got added into my playlist, which is kind of unusual. But of course, the main attraction for me was the Rocky Road to Dublin. Which I binged it for days on end after having seen the film, but we will still get to it, I think.
Yeah, let me just here say something about the music, because as we were watching it with Ala the first time, I was like, oh, the music is just, it doesn't stop and it's always going on, and it's perfect because the music drives the movie and the plot so much, and I felt like, wow, mm-hmm. This is incredible. And then when we watched the credits and it said Ludwig Göransson, I said, of course it's Ludwig Göransson. I'm a huge fan of Ludwig Göransson, and he had worked with Ryan Coogler before on Black Panther, which is also an awesome movie soundtrack. He also did the music for The Mandalorian, worked with Nolan on Tenet, not on Tenet, on what's it called? The movie about the Oppenheimer. There you go. Mm-hmm. So I'm a huge fan of his, and he always experiments and brings something new to the table. And when I read that, okay, Ludwig Göransson, and that made it, that was somehow obvious to me then. I also watched an interview with him and Ryan Coogler where they discussed a bit how they went about doing the music. And one thing I thought was really interesting, they mentioned that they actually went on a trip in Mississippi, and I think they were at the crossroads that you mentioned. But the main idea was that Ludwig Göransson's dad was a guitar teacher, and he always wanted to do this trip. And Ryan Coogler also had an uncle which always used to play blues music. So I think it was Ryan Coogler, Ludwig Göransson, his dad, and I don't know if anyone else, but they went on this trip through the South and went to a lot of these places where the blues music was born. And the other thing I thought was interesting that Ryan Coogler mentioned, that for him it was also about exploring his cultural heritage. I mean, specifically the blues music, and I think that's one of the topics that he usually explores in his movies, or at least he did as well in Black Panther, which is his. Yeah. I also saw Creed, but I think in Black Panther it's probably a bit more prominent.
Also, I think what we can say is that in the very beginning, it starts with the Southern blues, and then as the story progresses and gets more horror-y, I guess you could say, there's more kind of electric guitar elements, more like kind of hardcore sounds taking over by the end. And it's actually kind of noticeable. I feel like maybe if you're watching for the first time and you're not paying attention to it as much, maybe you don't notice it. But as you're watching the second time, it's very noticeable how the music just changes. Yeah. Also, what I think about the connection to the community and the kind of the common suffering, I always think to the scene where they pick up Delta Slim and they are in the car together. And Delta Slim is telling the story of his friend that he did some kind of a gig with, and then they got paid a lot of money, and then kind of the demise of this friend. And then after he tells the story, he starts harmonizing with his voice. And this is kind of the building block of the blues music. And I thought this is such a beautiful moment to show how the suffering of the people translates into music, because then they kind of build on that and then they play. I think Stack also then tells Sammy, "You've got that guitar, why don't you play it now?" Because that's kind of the musical moment. I thought that was a very cool scene.
Yeah, that is a great scene, yeah. Maybe let's talk a bit more about the twins and sort of the opening and the setting. I thought the introduction is also really cool. We mentioned this first scene we get to see them is outside the church, and we see that.
No, we don't see them outside the church. We see them outside the warehouse, the sawmill. That's where we meet them. By the car.
Okay, is that where they close the deal, or?
Yeah, where they're waiting for the.
Yeah.
Well, spoilers, so we can say waiting for the Klansman, basically, right?
Yeah. That was also really funny how the interaction went, because I think they get negotiating about this farmhouse, and then sort of the owner asks them, "Oh, you don't want this?" And then they sort of get a bit confrontational, and one of the brothers shows them a gun. But then it's funny that they cut by just giving him a bag with money. So I thought that was a bit hilarious that it's not so confrontational at the beginning, or it's we move on from that plot point quite quickly, which we will return to later. But
yeah. I think it's because that's used, at least in that particular scene, it's used more as a character development scene rather than a plot scene. So you kind of get a glimpse into what kind of people they are.
Yeah.
And that they're not to be messed with, even by the Klansman. But he is alone, so what can he do? There are two of them.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really character-defining moment, because it's shown that, okay, they know how to handle themselves, but also that they are sort of smart, because they don't get confrontational in that first instance, or they just follow along, like close the deal like a normal deal would go.
What I think is interesting is that the twins are color coded. You can tell them apart, and they have their distinct colors, which I thought was kind of interesting because the colors are very vivid, and I wouldn't necessarily expect to see them in the real world of that time, because. And also the fact that the colors are red and blue, that obviously made me think of the red pill, blue pill, right? I don't know if that's true, but it's kind of interesting to entertain the thought because Stack is red and Smoke is blue. And if you think about it, what was it in the Matrix that the red is kind of what is it symbolizing?
It's basically you exit or you're willing to know the truth, whereas blue is you uphold the simulation and you don't want to know anything about it.
I guess like if you're taking the red pill, you are ready to accept the unsettling truth, or kind of
exactly.
And then the blue is you continue living in the reality that you knew until now. And this is actually, technically speaking, kind of what happens, right?
But
because
the other way around,
Stack
right?
is the one. No, Stack is the one that becomes a vampire, right? So his reality changes. And whether it's truth or not, that's kind of up for debate. But Smoke is the one who continues living and then ultimately dying in the reality that he did know, right? He doesn't want to change sides to go and take the red pill, I guess you could say in that case.
Well, I would argue the other way around. Like, yes,
I mean,
like Smoke stays in the actual reality and Stack moves on or goes into a fantasy world, if it was stays in a fantasy world.
I mean, it depends how you see the Matrix, right? Whether you see the Matrix as the real world or a simulation. So yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting.
You should also add, it depends on how you see vampires, whether they're good or bad. And in your particular case, it clearly seems like you're hyping them so much, so...
But also, Michael, I sent a picture, Dario sent a picture of the crossroads. I don't know if you already saw it. Since your chat is on mute for some reason. He sent a picture of the crossroads, and I just sent a picture that I saw today talking about how the twins are dressed in different mob attires, which I kind of didn't pick up on.
I mean, yeah, the different hats, that's kind of noticeable. I didn't know the influence, but yeah.
I would say that the tweed cap is kind of Irish. You kind of know that, I think. If you, I guess that can be, that is kind of obvious. But the Italian mob, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
I think the hat is like very wide. The hat that Stack wears is very wide. I wouldn't necessarily associate it with the Italian mob hats, but I mean, stylistic choice, I guess.
But it would make sense in the context of these characters that because they went to Chicago and they probably or most likely had contact with Irish gangs and Italian gangs for sure. We know that they worked in some capacity with Al Capone.
But that would be Italian, right?
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you, isn't red and blue also a color? Doesn't it also have a historical meaning in America, like politically?
True. Dario?
It does, yeah. I mean, red is...
Our political consultant here.
Yeah, totally. I'm an expert on American politics. Not really. I mean, it's difficult because, I mean, these days, red is Republican and blue is Democrat, right? But actually, the Democrats were once more right than the Republicans, especially back in that day. The Democrats were probably actually the Republicans of our time. So it's... And I don't know if they have always shared the same colors. You know, Republicans were always red and Democrats were always blue. So it might be difficult to answer that now. I don't really know back in the day how it was.
Yeah, but during the war, weren't there wars in the South? I mean, my knowledge of American history is very minimal, but weren't there like wars or the civil
Civil
wars in the
War,
South? Yeah.
yeah, true. But that was Confederacy versus Union, right?
Okay, and didn't they also have
Well,
like
the
blue and red?
Confederacy is obviously red, though, but I feel like that's not really. You wouldn't necessarily, I think, divide the twins by that standard,
Yes,
because obviously they belong to the same
particularly because they're
community.
both black, so
Exactly.
I guess yeah.
Yeah. So it's, but I mean, it does sort of conjure up a lot of images and a lot of comparisons because I mean those colors are very meaningful from the side that they also help the audience to tell the twins apart. What I thought was a bit funny that they have the same haircut, I think, because that would make sense because it would be really difficult to change the his beard and stuff. But Stack has some what it's called, some gold tooth, I think. Is it Stack? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I want to tell you, I don't know if you, in your research, Michael, stumbled upon that as well. Apparently, in the official Spotify channel of Sinners, yes, I am unfortunately talking about Spotify.
Finally, you have been red-pilled.
No, no, I was not. Anyway, they have a lot of material on the film, additional material, and I just sent you two things in the chat. There are the two things that I sent you now are kind of snippets from
Chicago Daily Times.
Chicago Daily Times and Clarksdale Herald. And the first one talks about the gang tensions between the Irish and the Italian mobs, which is kind of something that is being alluded to in the movie as well, right? Because Mary at some point confronts Stack about having stolen from both the Irish and the Italians because they have Italian wine and Irish beer at their party. And this is kind of how they are talking about it, that the twins, before they left Chicago, they stole from both of them, and that led to then the tensions between the mobs. And this is what the article is about here. And then the second one is about a bank robbery that gives a little bit of a glimpse into the activities of the twins before they come to the Mississippi Delta again, about how they robbed the bank. So this just little kind of context that just adds to this, that adds to the story. I thought this very cool how they did that there's just a lot of world building to it.
Mm-hmm. I didn't look too much into that, but I was looking to see if I could find how they did the twin scenes, because I thought that was flawless during the whole movie. You couldn't really tell how they did it. I mean, the twin thing it's been around in movies for a long time. I mean, it's been done before. But something that I found specifically for this movie, one thing they had is like special cameras, which they called the Halo, which Michael B. Jordan it was a rig that was mounted on his shoulder and around his face. And so I think they used that to, maybe later insert him into the movie. And the other thing is that they used a special camera where they had to keep the camera sort of static, and then they filmed the scenes for one twin, let's say Stack, and then they did the whole scene again, but this time with the other twin. And sometimes they had a stand-in for Michael B. Jordan, who played the other part, the other twin. But yeah, that's really interesting. I think that in some scenes, how they probably did it is they filmed the scene with the whole crew first, because in some scenes, the both twins are surrounded by people, especially in the barn and in the mill where the party is happening. And I think on the second go, you just film Michael B. Jordan on his own, because then you have to see that it's easier to match his rhythm and where he is in the frame to all the rest that's in the frame.
I would imagine that's crazy difficult to do somehow, to coordinate this, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Or how much do you think is done by, computer aids and stuff and CGI?
I mean, I feel like it's always like that with technology, right? If you have good material, then you will have a good time with it. And if you don't, then you won't make it work with any amount of technology that you have, probably. So I feel like you definitely have to coordinate it logistically and to film it in a way that already works well on its own, and that you have a lot of good material to then be able to work with technologically. Of course, it's not at all the first film to do such a thing. It's been done a million times before, but it's a technical challenge, and the fact that they even wanted to do it, that they opted for that, they could have just taken two different actors, right, and said, oh, they're just brothers, but they decided to do it like that. So that's still a choice that is very interesting, that they decided to do it this way,
Well,
and a
because
challenge
the
that they
dude is so
wanted for
handsome,
themselves.
you just had to have a
I
clone
know,
of him.
right?
Yeah, I know it is really difficult to pull it off, and like the coordination. And I mean, what's great is that you have different tools at your disposal, and for some scenes you use this tool, and for some scenes you use the other. I think the shot or the sequence that I mentioned with the twins in front of the church, with them handing over the cigarettes. I mean, that for me that was perfect. I mean, that coordination
And that
between
they
the twins.
decided to open with that scene, the twins with that scene was mwah, chef's
Yeah.
kiss.
But I think that's probably one instance where they used the halo, or where they had the stand-in for sure. And Michael B. Jordan mentioned that was particularly difficult to do because they had to have this rhythm and coordination. But yeah, I mean, Michael B. Jordan, we have to say he is great in the movie, playing these two characters. I mean, from a voice perspective, Smoke has a much lower voice. He's much more serious, and Stark is a more flamboyant. I mean, you can also tell that just from the hat.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for sure.
he does a great job playing both of the
Definitely.
brothers.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of Michael B. Jordan in other movies, but at least not all of them, so I can't speak for other roles of his, but I have heard from other people who said that this is probably his best role so far, which is not surprising because he plays two very different characters. He plays two characters. They're both very different, and even more so, the one of them then throughout the film then becomes a villain, right? So that's even more range or even more depth to the character, right?
Yeah, actually, I think his first role, I mentioned it on the last episode, or I think, no, it was in the adolescence episode, is he started in The Wire, which is the series about different characters. I think I don't even know if it's in Philly or where
Isn't
else.
it in Detroit or something?
Yeah, maybe that's Detroit. Yeah, but Michael B. Jordan there plays a young guy who lives in sort of these, I forget what they call, but it's basically some poor housing where a lot of people live that consume drugs.
The project.
The projects, that's right. Thank you. And yeah, I remember he was great even at that young age. I think he was, I don't know, very young, like 15 or something. I don't know. But that's where he started.
And how is the series called that I started to watch that you told me about, Ella?
Wire.
No, not No, this other one. He's also playing in there. Oh no, Lakeith, that's not him. No. How is that?
Lakeith, our
That's
boy Lakeith.
Atlanta that was, but that's not him. Sorry,
With
completely.
Darius.
Yeah, that's completely
Yeah,
another
that's
dude.
Atlanta.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
kind of thought that was him, but it's not. Forget about it.
No. But also, I think another film that Michael B. Jordan is being very praised for is Fruitville Station, which is also a Ryan Coogler film that apparently was also one of his better film. I mean, apparently he has a very good reputation. I haven't seen a lot of his films. I think I only saw the one Black Panther film and not even the second one. I'm not really even sure. But yeah, I heard good things about Fruitville Station. Something to check out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to move on to other cast? Maybe before we talk about the more important thing, which is the vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe let's go on with some other cast people. Obviously, the character that we have not mentioned a lot yet is Sammy, who is played by Miles Caton, I think, or Caton. I will say Caton for now. Apparently this is his first performance, which is quite amazing. And we had a lot of first performance people recently that we were amazed by. He has a great singing voice too. He sounds very much like a blues musician. He has a very deep voice for his age, I feel like. Although, of course, probably not so much an age thing. But yeah, he is doing an amazing job, like especially considering how many cool actors are playing here and everybody's doing an amazing job. He is just as good as everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he gets to shine sort of in the middle and in the middle of the movie, yeah. Mm-hmm. And he actually had to learn how to play the guitar for this role. He didn't know how to play the guitar. Yeah, he knew how to play piano, but he didn't know how to play the guitar. And there's actually, I saw a recording of him and Ludwig Göransson playing the song live, which is amazing. And
the song, which one? I Lied to You.
I Lied to You. Yeah, that's my favorite one. Yeah, that song is amazing. And yeah, he also Ludwig Göransson mentioned that the guitar, it was quite challenging to find that guitar because the guitar is a character in itself, and that's what they were going for. So this very special look. But it's also interesting because he mentioned that so this metal that it has the effect that it has more resonance, and that's relevant if you're playing live without microphones at that time. And it also, they tuned it to the key of D. So in this way, you can see Sammy playing sometimes with this sort of cap on his finger. And by tuning it to the key of D, so he just can slide his finger along the guitar, and then he can play different chords. So yeah, very cool guitar. It sounds very, very cool. It's a character in the movie.
Yeah, I think we should probably get to the topic of guitar being a separate character in the movie once we talked about the vampires. Because I feel like it has a very, definitely a deep meaning to it, right? Who's your favorite character, if not, like, if we exclude the twins and Sammy?
Oh, there are so many, but one for sure is I forget his name, but the door guy. He's so
the door guy, Cornbread.
That's the bit like the chubby dude, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know him from 8 Mile. 8 Mile. He's cool.
Yeah, he's very funny in that role, and he's great. But also the Delroy Lindo, I think, is great in the movie.
Yeah,
is that the guy that shot himself? Because that's my favorite character.
The things that Daria remembers from the movie, you can see he enjoyed it very much.
That's my favorite character. I don't remember how he's called, but he's just
Delta Slim is the musician, right? So
exactly.
The pianist that they enlist.
He's called Delta Slim. Okay. Yeah, so I fully agree with you, Michael.
He's kind of the comedic relief, right?
Oh,
in the film.
Absolutely is, yeah. And the good one.
he is my character. He's my favorite, and obviously Remick, because I'm sorry, the best villain, the best guy, and he's Irish. What could I ask for? What else? Although, and I don't actually know if that's the first Irish vampire. At least if we don't count Jerry, played by Colin Farrell. I think his name was Jerry in the movie.
Fright
Night. Fright Night. Well, he was not Irish. The actor is Irish, right? And I think Jack O'Connell is just the best. I love Jack O'Connell in general, but here, I just can't.
What was he in before? I mean, I know his face, but I don't remember.
He was, for example, actually the thing that it reminded me of in the Sinners was Godless, the series, which is kind of a Western, and that's why I could totally see him in that role, because that's the role I kind of remember him most from. And it's taking place, I mean, not at the same time, but it's kind of also like a historic a period piece, right? So yeah, I don't know, I could just totally see him in that environment, but he is a British actor, so he's not American. What else did he play? And I think he was in Skins in the very early days. He was in This Is England. This was, I think, his first role. He was like really young there. But yeah, so he definitely has some track record.
Going back to talking about characters, maybe for me the one scene that establishes Stack very well on some other characters as well as the town is when they drive to town and sort of starts recruiting the people for the band, but also organizing the party for that night. Two interactions I thought were very interesting is when he arrives and he talks to this girl in front of one of the stores.
That's Smoke.
Is that Smoke? The red one is Smoke?
No, that's the blue one. That's Smoke.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. They're twins. That's why.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so Smoke talks to the girl and Stack goes on to recruit the people. Yeah, but that's right. Smoke talks to this girl and sort of asks her to watch out for the truck. And it's interesting how he sort of teaches her in that interaction how to not sell herself short, and sort of teaches her the skill of hustling and negotiating. So I really liked it because he cares about the community and he wants that his people are taken care of. And
he cares about the community, shoots the guy in the ass.
Yeah, that's the
and then gives them money for a doctor as well.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the other interaction that I really liked. I mean, he shoots, he protects the van. We can see that he is how to put it? Not aggressive, but yeah,
fair, I guess.
He's violent
in a way.
He's dominant. He takes care of or he watches out for his van. But on the other hand, after he recognizes the robber, he also, like you said, he pays the doctor he pays the owner of the store so that that the doctor takes care of him, and he also shoots the other robber as well, because just to
to make a point.
Yeah, and to declare who is in charge here, yeah, because like you said, he has this reputation. They are what are they called? The brothers,
the Smokestack twins.
The Smokestack twins, that's right. So they have to sort of take care of that reputation. I mean, the reputation can be compromised.
But how it's just then shown again in the interaction with the chows, right? Because when he negotiates with the wife over the price, and then you can see how this is just a technique that everybody has to perfect, and this is just how it works, how business works in that town or in the South or like in general. I thought that was cool how they showed that.
Yeah, I mean, that technique is very relatable. I mean, to a lot of people and a lot of culture, that's something that's done, especially in these small towns where, you know the people and you sort of haggle for the price. Yeah, and I think that the town is really interesting as well because, and at least for me, it looks like that it's sort of a refugee for, let's say, minorities, but everyone knows each other, and it's sort of apart, let's say, from a white kind of town.
I'm not sure it's that apart actually, because there is kind of more of black people in the town, at least the way that we see it, I think. But I believe at least that in the film they show the chow shops, right? And they have two shops, and one of them is where Smoke finds. So Grace is the Bo. Okay, Bo Chow is the friend of Smoke that he went to visit, right? And he enters the shop where he then meets their daughter. And this is one of them. And then Bo tells the girl to get her mom. And then she goes across the street and she gets her mom in the other shop that they own. And I think the difference is that one is for the black folk and another one is for the whites.
Yeah, you're actually right. That's one moment, and also at the train station, the blacks and whites are separate. I think we see the signs. Yeah. But I mean, just from the interaction of the people we get to see, that's what I meant. That it's sort of a community, and at least we know that there are white people living in the town or close by because later we get to know this family who gets turn into vampires, and they mention that. Yeah, at the train station, we also get to meet, I think, Grace, that's her name, played by Hailey Steinfeld, who is...
No, that's Mary. Grace is the wife of Bo. So Grace is one of the chows, and then Mary is the love interest of Stack.
Yeah, and it gets hinted at in this scene that they had a history together, and then that they have known each other for a while, and there was some conflict in their relationship. I also, something that this scene in the town reminded me of was Scorsese's movie, his last movie. What's the name again?
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, where we also have a scene where I think in that case it's DiCaprio who arrives at this town, and it's a town not ruled by, but predominantly where natives live. It reminded me a bit of that in sort of the setting and how it was shot. There were some similarities there. And so the brothers in this scene, they sort of start organizing the party, and we can see that Smoke takes care of the logistics while Stack recruits the band members and sort of does the marketing. So here we also get to see
does the marketing.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it. Just comes to the train station, is like, yo, you want a drink? Come over.
Yeah.
That's the original marketing.
A good marketing is also when he convinces Delroy Lindo to join by offering him a beer, and Delroy Lindo's reaction when he drinks the beer.
It's actually kind of interesting because, like, was beer not really that much of a thing in the South? Or, like, what is the...
No, it wasn't, because it was hot down there, right? And
okay.
Cooling was an issue and all that stuff. So I think this was like a luxury good, and they only had really the hard liquor stuff there.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because like I never thought about it, but it is obvious once you see it. But the fact that they kind of show it in this way and it makes you realize that it's kind of a learning experience. But also, what I thought is the technology of making beer, is that also something that is kind of proprietary to the Irish, or is that something that other people couldn't really do well, or is it just because of the heat?
It's easy to make beer, right? It's not rocket science. Yeah, it basically is three ingredients, right? So if you can basically do like distillery stuff, then you should be able to make beer as well. But I feel like it's just a more European thing, and therefore maybe more prevalent in the north rather than the south back then.
What I was also thinking is, I don't know if it was during this time that the alcohol consumption was restricted.
Oh yeah, it's prohibition. It's prohibition.
In which year does it actually play?
32. It's still prohibition time.
When did they abolish prohibition?
I think it was here, 1920 to 1933.
Oh, okay, so right.
So it's just about to end.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that makes sense because during Capone's time, that's why they were, I guess, popular, or they were so successful, because they were dealing beer and other stuff that weren't available to buy like legally. Yeah, and I think after the scene in the town, that's where the scene happens that you mentioned, where they drive in the car and towards the party, and then we have this interaction between Delroy and Sammy in the car, and he tells the story. I think that's when that happens.
Do we want to get to the point? Do we want to get to the vampire stuff?
Yes.
The first time we see Remick, who we don't even know yet that is the main villain, he is running from something and his skin is burning. And I thought that was kind of a really nice touch to show it, because the sun's still up. And you don't know yet what's going on, but once you know, you know. So he is running from the Choctaw tribe, who are natives to that region. And what I found out is that apparently the Choctaw were one of the kind of the only communities that supported the Irish during the famine. So when native people of America were sending money to the Irish people during the famine. So they had kind of a very strong cultural bond, apparently. And it's not illogical that Remick is running from them. So I guess they took him in because he was Irish, and he kind of took advantage of that. And then they found out who he really is, and now they are trying to hunt him down, right? So he ran away from them. And he runs to the house owned by Klansmen, right? He asks them to let him in, which then introduces the trope of a vampire needing an invitation, which is going to be kind of the golden thread of the whole film. So it goes through the whole vampire narrative that they will need an invitation. This is one of the elements of the vampire lore that is not always present, right? The lore is very deep and very wide, but not all of those elements are always present. So in this particular case, the invitation and the sunlight are the things that are going to be here, right? So the garlic as well, where we get a lot of fun moments from. And then I guess silver as well. So there are some elements that we know from the vampire lore that are going to be present. And so he gets invited to the house, right? So then the Choctaw come to the house of the Klansmen, and they talk to them, but obviously the Klansmen don't want to listen to them, and that leads to their demise.
Yeah, I think I wanted to add to the point about the vampire lore, and it works beautifully, or it's a great choice by Coogler to just pick a handful of elements from the lore, because it sort of works in the way as well that it works regarding like whites versus black, let's say, because not letting someone into your house, that there's sort of this distance between both of the ethnic groups. And also it plays into a bit of the I don't know what the term is, but so religion is sort of, there's this juxtaposition between religion, which we saw with Sami and his father in the church, but also this I don't know what the term is, but these local beliefs which are sort of portrayed or shown in the character of Smoke's ex-wife, and that, yeah, I mean, Black communities have their own beliefs and are sort of sometimes very superstitious, if you will, but it sort of plays into that as well.
That's actually a good point. We never discussed that, but yeah, Annie basically embodies this connection to the ancestors, right? So she is connected to to the ancestors, or to their culture, to their origin, through this kind of voodoo, hoodoo type of thing. Although, I guess, I mean, in a very wide sense, coming from a person who doesn't know much about either, because I think one of them is Haitian and one of them is African or something like this. But yeah, so kind of the pagan beliefs, and this is indeed like a juxtaposition between the Christianity that is embodied by Sami's father, and then by this pagan belief that connects to the ancestry, to the origins of the Black people. I'm not sure, but you can see it as a commentary on Christianity being kind of a colonial thing in its own, right? Because it's not necessarily inherent to the Black community. It is also something that was kind of, yeah, they were dragged into it almost, I guess you could say, and made to forget their own beliefs. And this is something that Annie is embodies like a different side of it, right?
Yeah, I think colonialism in America is a bit, I mean, in North America is a bit different than in South America. I mean, I think it's and like I said, I don't know American history that well or that deeply, but at least for South American history, I mean, the Spanish colonizers, they really imprinted or forced their religion onto the local Aboriginal cultures. So I would say that there's, in the South America, it's probably stronger than North America, but it's still true that if you will, that originally slaves that were brought from Africa into North America, and then they sort of had to adopt the religion from the white communities, where I guess in some sense they were also forced to adopt that religion.
Well, I mean, one of the characters, I think, I'm not sure now anymore who says that to Annie, but someone does say to her, this is kind of your Louisiana stuff, you know, which is kind of why it makes me think of voodoo and hoodoo. But yeah, so this is, I think, also one of the things that maybe don't strike you as much, but is a very subtle comment on the belief systems and being allowed or not allowed to do certain things, like play blues. What I also found interesting is that when Remick is talking to the Klansmen, he is saying that they got his wife, or they killed his wife. And we don't ever see anything else about it. It doesn't get mentioned, I think, anymore. But he does have a ring on his finger, which kind of is like, maybe he actually was not alone. It's very interesting. Also, I sent you another thing in the chat. So this is the other thing that I saw in the Spotify channel, which is a Boston Daily Journal article from, let me see, 1911, so about 20 years before the things that are happening in the movie. And it is an article about a ship that arrives at the Boston Harbor, and everybody's dead on it. And that's kind of the origin of Remick in the US, right? This is how he arrives to the US from Ireland. Also an interesting touch. And of course, again, it's a ship. Ships and vampires is just one thing, one love.
Yeah, should we start talking about the party?
Yeah, so I think let's start talking about the party by talking about the song that Sammy sings, because that's the major scene, right?
Yeah, you're talking about what's the song? "It Lied to Me" is the title.
I Lied to You.
I Lied to You. Very good. Yeah, I think that's the best thing about the movie, or one of the standout things in the movie. Both from the music, that, I mean, his voice just shines through. In this interview I mentioned with Ludwig Göransson, he also talked about how there's this blues singer, I forgot his name, that they worked on with, but there's also the old Michael B. Jordan, the old, no, not the old Michael B. Jordan, sorry, the old Sammy, which we get to see after the end credits. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the people that Ludwig Göransson worked with. And he said that they were in the studio and coming up with the songs, and then this person said that, okay, he had this song stuck in his head or this riff stuck in his head for a long time, and he sort of played that initial riff on the guitar, which is how the song starts, and so also some part of the lyrics. And Ludwig Göransson said, okay, it's perfect. It fit perfectly for this movie, what this movie was about.
Mm-hmm. And so the scene is showcasing the talent that Sammy has, right? So the ability to connect to the ancestors. And I think this is a beautiful scene because it shows the connection that kind of breaks the time, I guess, right? Because so once he starts singing, you see all those different characters that's not only African characters, but also so a lot of tribal dancing. But then also this is kind of the illustrating the past, right? So where this music came from. And that's why I also think the scene with Delta Slim, where he harmonizes with his voice, is also kind of part of this, right? So it came from somewhere, and then it's going to be a building block for something else. And that's exactly what the scene shows. So he sings, and the music that he makes now is built on something from the past, but it's also going to be a starting point for some other music. And then you see all this kind of like hip-hop vibes and rock music as well. So it all connects. And then also what I think is really cool is that you see some kind of characters or I don't even know how you would call them. They're not really characters, but let's call them characters for the sake of it, from the Chinese culture as well, because the Chows are there too. So it's kind of this mix of cultures that come together for the shared experience. And I think this is really cool. And this is also what sets it apart from Remick and what he is trying to do, because he's not trying to have a shared experience. He's trying to steal that experience so he can gain something himself, right?
Question, is it only minorities that we get to see of, or is there, I don't know, is there like some Irish as well, or I don't know, let's say some European culture or
No, I think well, first of all, I wouldn't say it's a minority. But I think it's primarily the African influence, and then also the Chinese, because the Chows are there.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything European there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to come up with a word to sort of categorize this, because I think it is limited to some groups, I guess, because we have to put this up against what we'll see later, which is Remy and his music and the sort of culture he sort of stands for. But yeah, the scene is awesome. I mean, from the music, because we also get to listen to different genres and the evolution of these genres, but as well visually. And I think it's really interesting because I think the camera starts sort of on Sammy playing the song, and then it spins around, and that's where the sort of first I think it moves up to the ceiling where we get to see like a starry sky, and then the camera moves down again, spins around, and that's when all these different characters appear. And that technique is really cool, that spinning, because it allows them, I mean, from a directorial perspective, if you will, then to take those actors out of the scene. So when they return back to the normalcy, so that looks seamless, and it looks seamless how that transition between sort of this contact between earlier and future cultures through this sort of shamanic song, if you will. I think for me, Sam is sort of like a shaman in a sense.
Yeah.
And then, coming back to it. But at the same time, it's also a very human moment, because that night, I think it gets mentioned, is sort of the moment where the people, that community can get loose and enjoy themselves and not worry about their troubles, or that, let's say, about the threat, the white people, if you will. So it's also a very human moment. It's just them enjoying their music, which they weren't able to do in other places, right?
Yeah. And so this is the scene, this is the moment that attracts the vampires, right? That's where Remick and his two now disciples appear in this world, right? In the shared world. And they are trying to get in, and that's where they are asking for an invitation to get inside, which they do not get. I think those two moments, so this is the first moment where a community kind of like has this shared experience of music, and then there is another one, which is the Rocky Road to Dublin, where all the people that Remick and his vampires were able to turn into vampires, they have this moment also together, right? And they are also kind of trying to attract the rest of the people who are hiding in the juke joint to join them. I thought this is the best moment. And when I was watching it, I thought, listen, I could go to the next screening when this one ends just for this scene. I love it. I can watch it endlessly. I thought it was just amazing.
There are actually two moments, at least from a musical perspective. I think the first one is when Remy first arrives and they sing. Is the style like country? I mean, is it country or?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's country music, but
it's
folk music for sure.
Folk music, yeah, but it's clearly different than the blues that Sammy was playing.
It's very white.
It's also very lovely, and it's very catchy as well. Huh? It might be a bit annoying for some because it's sort of a bit of there's some a cappella in there. I personally love a cappella, but I think it's great. But yeah, that's juxtaposition between those two genres. But I think your favorite scene is comes a bit later when they're sort of dancing, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. But this is kind of also interesting to think about because the song that they sing when they come and they ask for an invitation inside is not a banger. It is not a banger.
This is not a banger. This is not a banger. And I know bangers. I know bangers.
So
no, that's what I mean.
I wonder if it is to show that there is not that much talent on that side of the fence, you know, and that's why Remick wants Sammy, or is it to show that they are not as threatening and they are not trying to attract you anywhere yet? They're just unthreateningly asking you to invite them inside. And so this is, I don't know which one it is.
No, I think
maybe
that's
it's
exactly both. I think it's both. So that's what I meant. It's sort of this folk music with a cappella, so it sounds very innocent. It's also, the voices are very small, high pitched, so it's a very stark contrast between between Sammy's voice that we heard before. But it's still very lovely, very pure, sort of very cute and innocent. And it's exactly those two things that they mentioned, that they want to sort of lure them outside or convince them that they let them in. But at the same time, it also plays on that thing that maybe there's a different music, or they're lacking talent, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, it's a different kind of music. That is definitely true. Then also when Mary comes out, they again are singing a song that is kind of like a folk song that is also kind of like this, filled with longing and with sadness a little bit, and it's definitely a different kind of vibe than what the party is going for. But also what I find amazing, and what I heard somebody talk about, is the choice of the song of Rocky Road to Dublin, right? Because Rocky Road to Dublin is a song about somebody leaving their hometown because the life is so bad. So it's Ireland. Life in Ireland was never easy. And the person that kind of is telling the story in the song is leaving Ireland to go to Liverpool for work, where they obviously meet with some discrimination, and the life there is also not going to be easy. So it's eventually a song about how you're leaving one shitty life for another shitty life, and this is connected to the story of the film. Is a good choice, because like you are choosing to leave your difficult life full of hardship as a Black person in the south of the US to become a vampire, which is also not going to be a very good life.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, not only for the Black people who are going through hardships, but I think Irish people as well, and at least in the beginning of...
Yeah. I mean, but for sure what you have to also mention is that Irish people were never considered the same level as all the other white people either. So
that's what I mean.
It's like, it's also kind of a story of a hierarchy almost, in a way, because we get the Klansmen, which are the upper caste of white people or something like that, right? So they are the supremacists. Then it is maybe the Irish, although again, like they are kind of way lower in the hierarchy, because they are almost not considered white. I think they were not, because they were immigrants from a super poor country, and they were like really cheap labor, and they were just working class, very much working class, or really poor, right? And then there is the Chows, the Chinese American, the kind of the representatives of the Chinese American community in the South, that are owning their shops. They are trading with the whites, so clearly they are higher up in the hierarchy than the Black people, right? Who are then the lowest caste of this whole situation.
Yeah, it definitely speaks about that as well. Going back to the dance scene, I think it's your favorite scene. I love the song for me, I have to say, there's a big but here. When I was watching the scene, something took me out of it. So I could see sort of, okay, these are actors just doing a choreography for a movie. And I think in part of it could be the makeup, because it's all vampires and they have this goofy makeup. It can also be partly the dance, which is a bit I don't know if I should say goofy, but sort of a bit over the top. And I think the lighting
this is Riverdance for you, my sir. It is over the top.
Yeah, and I think maybe the light, how they lit the scene as well. So for me, it took me a bit out of the movie, in the sense that I could see, okay, these are actors like doing. It looks a bit like a musical in a sense to me. I guess it
must say, this for me, they compare very well, the two scenes, because the scene with the mix of genres of the Semi song is also not serious, right? It's this whole kind of mixing of the blues with then very hip hop sound. I feel like they are going for it. They're not afraid to do it, and they're not afraid to seem silly in either of the scenes.
Yeah, it's just for me, I don't know why in the second song, it just took me out of it. It's just I could get out of the movie and just see it from outside, and okay, these are actors doing this thing. I think the factors that I mentioned are probably why, but yeah, I understand what they were going for. It's just for me, I don't know. I didn't feel the same immersion as in the first song, even though I love the song, I love the dance, but I guess some of these elements sort of took me out of it a bit.
Mm-hmm. But so just to recap again, what Annie says about the vampires, when she kind of describes what they are to all the people that don't know about it, because she obviously has more knowledge about the whole lore. She says the vampires are different from all the other evil spirits because they cannot connect to the ancestors. So it is kind of logical that would be the type of evil spirit that would get attracted by Sammy's music, because that is exactly what Sammy's music does, right? And Remick is kind of representing this colonial spirit in the sense that he is trying to gain this skill so he can have it for himself, because whoever he turns, the community that he builds, right, this vampire clan that he builds is kind of a hive mind, so they share whatever they can do with their creator. And so that's why he is able to speak Chinese, for example, when he turns Bo, and that's what he ultimately wants for himself by turning Sammy as well. And Sammy is kind of blaming himself because his father kind of warned him about making blues music and saying that this will attract the devil, and at some point, if you're dancing with the devil, someday he will follow you home, is what he says, right? So Sammy is blaming himself for singing and attracting this evil to their juke joint. Do we want to say something else, or do we want to get to the ending and how Sammy saves himself?
To the carnage. No, just a final closing thought on this, what you were saying, is that I think that's also the offer Remick makes to Sammy, that he sort of he can be free, because I think that works as well from a sociological or ethical standpoint, is that, okay, join me, so then you can free, you don't have to worry about the clans people, you can do whatever music you want, you don't have to struggle anymore. So if you join me, there is not going to be any struggle anymore. You don't have to worry about like earthly worries, and you can just do whatever you want. So it's this enticing promise of freedom, which is sort of what they had in the barn as well. But here it's sort of eternal freedom, if you will. And that's the promise Remick makes. And and just sort of going off the road and joining him. But yeah, that's they refuse, or I guess the person that refused is Grace, Bo's wife, right? Who starts the whole rumble.
Yeah, so she is the one that invites them in to start the carnage, as you said. But yeah, so I think we can skip at least I would skip most of this scene and get exactly to the scene where Sammy is fighting Remick. Fighting is a big word, but what I think is very important, and getting back to the topic of the guitar being the separate character, is his guitar is ultimately the thing that saves his life. Well, apart from smoke, of course. But he hits Remick with the guitar, and I think this part that you said is creating resonance, or kind of the metal part, is made of silver probably, and that's why Remick gets injured, right? And that's kind of what throws him off. And the moment where he becomes vulnerable for Smoke's attack, and that is ultimately the thing that kills him and his disciples.
Isn't it actually the sun coming up?
Yeah, it's the sun for them. Yeah, that's true. But they're kind of standing there watching this whole scene, and they can feel his pain, right? So that's what they find out during the fight. And I think this is a very important moment, because ultimately it's not only the music that Sammy makes is not only something that he is passionate about, it is something that saves his life, right? And in the last scene in the church, when we kind of go back to the beginning of the movie, where his father is confronting him and saying, you should give it up, he then doesn't. He chooses the music, he chooses the blues, he chooses to leave his community, if that's what it takes, to stick with his passion. And we have the scene where he says that kind of, he talks about what's important for him, and he says, my heart, and then we see Perline, the character that is kind of his love interest in the film. Then he says, my voice, that is Delta Slim, which kind of represents this kind of Black community and the connection. And then he sees, and he says, my soul, and then we see him playing. So basically he considers this music his soul. He considers it a part of himself, and he doesn't want to give it up. And I think this is a very cool way to kind of round it all up in the very end, so we can see this whole journey and see why he makes this choice ultimately in the end.
Yeah, beautifully said. I mean, I think what I also just realized just listening to you is that he also just chooses suffering, or he doesn't choose the easy road that Remick offers, because he realizes that's part of it. And how I sort of interpreted it in this movie is, you have these two ways you can go. I mean, in the end, Sammy decides to leave the town, and if you will, he chooses the road of the devil in a sense, if you will, but not really. I mean, what she also chooses is progress, leaving things behind. He also chooses moving on. He chooses getting a distance from his community. He chooses suffering in a sense as well, and I think that's what gives him the inspiration for his music as well, and allows him to grow. So yeah, I mean, the movie in general talks about these two different perspectives. I mean, reflected in the twins, reflected in the different music style we've talked about, reflected, I mean, gospel, folk, and
religion as well,
and blues. Yeah, the different two types of religion, two types of ethnic groups. And and I think for me at least, it's not that film, or Coogler doesn't want us to choose between one or the other. He just realized, okay, we live between those two in that spectrum, and sort of the inspiration we need for our music or for our artistry is we need both sides, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
What I forgot to mention about the scene about where Sammy sings he sings the song, and we get to see the different cultures. It also reminded me about another movie, which is Babylon from Damien Chazelle, where in the end, in Babylon, we also sort of get to see, I think it's the main character sitting in the cinema, and we also get some flashbacks about, not flashbacks, but we get to see actual images from old movies and then sort of more recent movies. So for me, that was sort of, there was a similarity there, how they reflected their artistic heritage, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Actually, also what I forgot completely, what we didn't talk about is the, I guess you could say, the ending of the movie. Although I would say that the ending of this movie is like an endless encore, because you feel like it ended and then it's like, well, it's just the From Dusk Till Dawn that ended. Now it's Django Unchained. Let's go.
Yeah.
Because when the night ends and the morning comes and the vampires are dead, yes, but the Klansmen are not, and they're the ones who are coming to kind of smoke everybody out of the sawmill and with the intention of killing everyone. And Smoke is there waiting for them. I thought this scene was just amazing. I love this scene because it's like really is kind of Django Unchained vibes.
And I think we also talked about that it's a bit like Gladiator as well, because when Smoke is sort of dying in the end,
yeah,
we get to see we can see Annie there and sort of, I don't know if we
with their child, with their daughter,
and it sort of reminds us of Gladiator when Maximus goes through the field and touches the grass, that sort of thing.
Yeah, going to his family. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. So that is one of the scenes, and then that's not even the end, because then there is the credit scene where the old Sammy is playing in a club, and then he gets a visit from from Stack and Mary that apparently are alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that we didn't get to see how Smoke killed Stack, so okay, then it makes sense that he sort of survived.
But it's just, the film just tricks you, because like I felt like, yeah, he's dead for sure. But then they didn't actually show that he was, so why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I meant with that Coogler talks about being in between the spectrums, because the movie ends with sort of, if you will, the bad guys, the people that made the wrong decisions, if you will, or that chose how to put it, chose not the dark side is a bit extreme, but they chose the life of enjoyment and, if you will, the easy life. But I think that's, Ryan Coogler doesn't side with them, even though the movie finishes with them. I think the movie is about both of these perspectives and what's between those two extremes.
Mm-hmm. Dari, you want to say something else?
About the movie in general, you know my opinion already. For me, I'm more on Michael's side in the sense of it was a movie.
No, Michael's side is much more deep than that.
No, it was okay overall. It has good parts, but I don't understand necessarily why you are hyping it that much.
All right. Well, for me, it's a 10 out of 10. I can speak about it for probably 5 hours. If we could do a 5-part of this podcast just about Sinners, great. I would do it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I completely understand that some parts really gripped me, others maybe less so, but I really appreciate about this movie. For me, it's not a perfect movie, and some reviews that I've read, they said this, that it's not a perfect movie, and there's maybe some contradictions in the movie, and maybe the fight scenes weren't that good. But for me, at least, the contradictions that happen in this movie is what makes the movie interesting, right? Or that it's not perfect, that it's sort of rough, because there's a lot to talk about in this movie. And I think it's going to be a great rewatch over the years.
For sure. Yeah. I agree. Well, I also think that the movie doesn't have to be perfect, because that's what I said when we went out of the cinema. I said, this is my new Saltburn. And I'm sorry, Saltburn, as much as I love it, I adore Saltburn, is definitely not perfect. And this one, yeah, I mean, the fight scenes, also there on the second rewatch, I'm like, why are they just some random people they're killing now in the fight scene that were just not even there? Like, who are those people they're biting? So this was kind of another thing that I thought, yeah, okay. But still, it didn't take away from the experience. I would say that, I mean, to be honest, like, apart from that scene, I can't think of anything else that was not perfect. For me, it is a very good movie. I definitely will rewatch it again. I already have. So definitely also a great addition to our top 10 vampire movies, I would say.
Yeah, I think it fits perfectly for this podcast. I mean, we started talking about vampires, and this touches on a lot of things that we like. I mean, From Dusk Till Dawn as well. And for me, it's the music. So yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking about this movie. Okay, that's it for this episode of the MacGuffin Takes. Thank you very much for listening, and catch you next time.
Bye.
Adios.